Are you wondering how to get your child to eat healthy? It is a challenge. Perhaps they're super picky and just don't want to eat anything beyond rice and white bread, or maybe there's so much sugar in the diet you're concerned and worried. And then you feel a little guilty because you know that diet is an important part of supporting kids with ADHD, but you just don't know where to begin or how to make a shift. So today we're talking with Anna Tai, and she is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, who has experience working with adults and with children with ADHD and around the emotions associated with food too. So what I love about Anna is that she understands that emotional aspect and incorporates it into her work too. So I'm looking forward to speaking with you. Welcome, Anna.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of this event.
Yeah.
Can you share with us the story of one of the kids that you have worked with when it
Mhm.
comes to eating difficulties like we just described? And what did it look like beforehand? And what did it look like afterwards?
Yeah.
What changed in their life as a result?
So I've worked with, so a little bit of my history, which is not going to take too long, is I'm part of the feeding clinic. So I work with a lot of other specialists doing feeding therapy. So so I do see a lot of kids with autism as well, which some of you might know. Kids with autism have super like sensory issues. So food, like being super picky is one of the thing with autism. And I remember I was like seeing this child. I think I'm seeing this kid. She was like 3 years old, I think, with autism. And basically, a complaint is that she's a picky eater. So mom was like, "Yeah, we've been working with the EB therapist and the feeding therapist and trying to get her just to eat vegetables." So I got some history from the mom, and then this is one of the mom who's like, I forgot what was her food. I think it was bit. She's like, I absolutely would not eat beet because when I was little, my mom makes me eat it. And I just thought it was so disgusting and I hated it. So she's like, she won't eat beet, right? So I was like, okay, so what kind of things have you guys tried? So the mom typically do all the things the feeding therapist told them to do, or at least the feeding therapist was doing all the therapy. So I was like, okay, so first of all, you need to change your attitude because a lot of times parents with picky eater is that they very quickly label the child as picky eater. They give them a piece of broccoli or some vegetables. The child try it once, they spit it out or throw it or feed it to the dog as like, oh, my child doesn't like broccoli or my child doesn't like green beans or things like that. So they label the child really quickly. So I told the mom, okay, so first of all, your child's only 3 years old. So she's been on this earth for only 3 years. So pretty much everything is new to her, right? And second thing is your child also have autism. So with autism, there's a lot of sensory things involved. So usually I start with explaining to parents that, hey, actually eating involves all five senses. So how the food look, how it tastes, how it feels when you touch the food with your hand, and when the food is in your mouth, how it feels. And also like how the food sound, because some children prefer crunchy food because it makes noise. And actually that crunching sound is very calming too when they crunch on chips and things like that. So so I explained to the mom that eating involves all five senses. So with kids with autism who are super picky, you have to help them desensitize those senses, like offering that food in front of them every meal, just so that they get used to looking at the food. Also having that food around, like seeing other people eat it, smelling the food from a distance, where they don't feel like, oh my god, it's in my face, right? And and then the other thing is just making sure that the food is fun. So I told mom, and adjusting her expectations. Because as adult, we're like, okay, I'm gonna try this food, so I'm gonna take a bite, taste it, and swallow it. And that's how we expect as adult. But when you're working with kids, especially young children and children with autism, they just not polite at that age. So when they taste or eat something, they just spit it out. But the thing is, a lot of parents automatically assume that, oh, my child spit it out, so he doesn't like it, so that they never offer it again. So with this particular patient, so I explained to a mom of that, and I was like, yeah, just let her try the food, let her play with it. Don't even try to force it. Just put it in front of her eat it in front of her. And then, and if she take a bite, that's great. Just have her kiss it, lick it, smell it. If she take a bite, spit it out, that's totally fine. Don't react. So after a month, the mom came back with the daughter for follow-up. And then the mom was like, oh my God, it worked. She's eating broccoli on her own. I just put it on her plate and she just picked it up and start eating it. And I did it only 3 times. And we've been in therapy for so long and trying to work on her taking a bite of like some vegetables and still not working. But what she told me last time, it worked. So yeah, that was my happy story.
That's awesome. And it must have felt so invigorating for that parent.
Yeah, like she was just so happy because especially with this parent, like the first time when she came to me, you know how some parents you can kind of feel that, you know what, it's like this is my 10th time going to someone for help. Like I don't think she's gonna help me. Like you can sense that from her. But when she came back, like you can just see that big smile on her face, like totally different person.
That's awesome. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that you mentioned the sensory processing too, because kids with ADHD too also
Yeah.
often have sensory processing differences, and that comes
Mhm.
into play with what they
Yeah.
eat and how they feel the
Mhm.
compression of chewing and the process of that. So awesome.
Yeah.
What brought you personally into the work that you do and to write books such as Eat to Focus?
Yeah, so I'll try to make the story short. So it's like when I started doing this, start working with kids with ADHD. So I used to get a lot of referral for failure to thrive because one of the side effects of the medication is that it suppresses your appetite to a point that you just have no appetite at all. So I see a lot of kids start losing weight when they start on the medication. So that's why I started. And then after a while, I start noticing there's this like psychiatrist who's been referring patients to me. He start prescribing this fish oil. It's a fish oil that came out about 10 years ago, but because fish oil is a natural substance and can be patented by drugs company, so drugs company, I can't remember which one, but they take fish oil, tweak a couple molecules, and then turn this into a super potent fish oil. But the thing is that fish oil was actually made initially for heart disease, helping people lowering cholesterol level. But this specific psychiatrist was actually prescribing this fish oil to the kids with ADHD. And he's also telling them to tell the parents to give the kids coffee. I was like, oh, okay, so fish oil helps with ADHD, and then caffeine also helps. And I found all these other stuff. And that was 10 years ago. There wasn't a whole lot of studies on diet and nutrition. Because back then, the doctors and everyone still tell you that, oh yeah, the diet doesn't work. Like it doesn't work at all. It have no correlation. But I was also seeing a lot of kids with autism who, when the parents put them on the gluten-free and dairy-free diet, works really good with the behavior. So that was the beginning of where I get that interest in that because of my patients. But then years later, I start noticing like actually was more noticeable. She have some of the symptoms, but it's just when school works get worse, I was like, oh my God, I think my child has ADHD. And I was freaking out because I was like, okay, if I take her to her doctor, I know what's going to happen. They're going to put her on medication right away. And because she's such a picky eater, we're struggling with weight, and meal times was horrible every night. I was like, she can't be on those medications. So I was like, oh, wait a minute. I remember that psychiatrist was like using like the fish oil and then the caffeine. So maybe I'll start with those. So I start doing my own research because now I have more of a personal interest in it. So I was like, okay, we're going to start those and then we're going to look into diet because that's where my specialty lies in, right? I'm a dietitian. And I also help with a lot of kids who have genetic disorder, rare mutations where I fix them or at least help them with the genetic mutation with food. So I was like, okay, I can use all of that experience and then try to figure out like how this ADHD thing works. So that's where I started. And that was like what, 20, 12 years ago when I started doing all this research. So, and then I was like, after a while, I was like, you know what? Other parents can benefit from this too. So I was like, oh, let me write a book. And that's how it started. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that work. And now we get to reap the benefits of going diving a little bit more even into where to start with picky eating if we feel like the child has having challenges. So what do you think happens for kids with ADHD? Like what are some of the challenges that can come along with food and ADHD specifically?
Yeah, so with the ADHD, very specifically, is like looking at the underlying cause of the ADHD. So because of my background as a dietitian nutritionist, I focus more on the eating side, and I also emphasize that nutrition feeds the body. So if it feeds the body, it's good for the body, it's good for the brain too. And actually, in my book, I mentioned like an analogy, like if you just bought a brand new home and you want to do some renovations, changing some appliances, you just can't figure out which one works and which one not works if there's no electricity, right? Like when you do that inspection, you always have the electric company turns on the electricity so you know which light is working, whether the faucet or the heater, any of those is working. So that's where the nutrition comes in with kids with ADHD. But then the thing is, that's the science part, right? Like, oh yeah, we know like everyone needs good nutrition, especially children who are growing. But the challenge with kids with ADHD is that the brain is a little bit different. I hate to say that it is wired differently. I prefer to use the word more delay, because if it's a delayed brain, that means that we can always do something to help it catch up. And I do that all the time with my patients. So the specific with the ADHD brain is that, so there's a low dopamine level. That's where the medication targets. And also the other thing with the ADHD brain is it doesn't process sugar very well. A normal brain pretty much use sugar or glucose exclusively as energy. But in ADHD brain, there is about 8% less. So it doesn't process sugar that well. So in a sense, like I see a lot of adults and kids with ADHD tends to gravitate towards sugar and carbs is because even though there's enough in the body, but it's not quite getting through to the brain. So the brain feels that low energy and just needs, it's like the cravings is more like, it's actually called cravings. So it manifests as hunger, because when parents come to see me, they often say, my child is hungry all the time. But in adult terms, it's cravings, right? When us as adults, we want sugar. We're like, oh yeah, I have cravings for sugar. And then the other part is the dopamine. So sugar, like the sugar that people or manufacturer put in the food, like in my mind, is really not food. It acts more as a chemical. So when we eat sugar, we get that so-called sugar high, but it's more like that sugar actually stimulate the dopamine. So you get that burst of, oh, that felt so good, right? But then because with the kids with ADHD, they don't have enough dopamine. Either they don't make enough or the receptor don't have enough receptor. So when they get that sugar, they get that sugar high. And then after a while, it comes back down. Then they want more. So after so many times, it's almost like addiction to cocaine or drugs. They just need more and more sugar the next time to get the same raise in dopamine or same high. So that's one. And then the other one is like more related to food intolerance and sensitivity. So sometimes actually with kids with ADHD, they tend to have more food sensitivity, so like food allergies, but they also have a lot of hidden food intolerance. So those are not like, so if we think of food allergies, we're thinking of someone who just ate a piece of shrimp or seafood, and then they break out immediately in hives or swellings in the face. So those are usually immediate allergies that we're thinking of, like is a physical manifestation. But a lot of times with kids with ADHD and even kids with autism, what we're seeing is more of a hidden food intolerance. So it's not necessarily an allergic reaction where it triggers some immune response in the body, but it's more of a chemical reaction. So what it is the reason why I call it hidden is because a lot of times this doesn't show up like to a couple hours or maybe up to 3 days later. And the symptoms is not always as obvious, like a skin rash or diarrhea, tummy aches, or things like that, but it's more of a behavioral kind of change. So a lot of times I have parents who tell me that, oh yeah, like if you ask the child, they're like, oh yeah, I feel fine after eating that. And then the parents like, oh no, I don't think so. Like 3 days later, you act funny or you kind of lost your focus like 2 or 3 days later. But sometimes these intolerance, because it's hidden and you're not aware of it, it can manifest also as picky eater because it can be hurting them internally. And in younger children, like the 2, 3 years old or even 4 years old, they just don't have that vocabulary to tell you that, hey, every time I eat, it hurts, right? They just, rather than having that vocabulary to say it to you, they just like, oh, I just don't want to eat. And I'll just stick to my safe food. So that's kind of also manifest as picky eaters. And then the other part of the addicting thing is things like dairy product and bread. Those are very addicting because of the gluten and the casein in it. So, and I think people who kind of follow this like natural like healing thing and the eating part, they heard of like how dairy and gluten turns into casomorphine and gliadorphins, which stimulate the opioids receptor as well. So that also creates that addicting behavior or cravings towards certain food. So yeah, so yeah, that's the ADHD side of the picky eating.
So then if we want to dive in and help in this area, here is something that I've experienced personally too, right? So then I want to expose the child to more foods, and I do something like pack sugar snap peas for lunch. They go to lunch, they come home. The next day you put them back in the lunchbox, they come back home. And how do you stop throwing food away that is good, nutritious food? And how do we start getting into a space where we can help, provide that nutrition?
I totally remember those times. Like I try to be like super good, right? Especially when you're a dietitian too, you're like, okay, we're gonna pack all the good stuff in there, right? So I used to pack my daughter's lunch. Same thing, like everything just comes back. She doesn't eat at all. I was like, what are you doing at lunch? Like, what does your friends do at lunchtime? Like, do they not eat too? So I'll pack her all these different things. And I was like, she'll tell me, oh, I don't want that. I was like, it's okay. Just bring it with you, share with your friends. So I will pack her with all these different things and just tell her, just have fun with your friends. If you don't want to eat it, trade with your friends, whatever they have, like just switch. So that's one thing you can do. And yeah, like I remember one time she's cleaning out her backpack and I found this like mashed up thing in a Ziploc bag. I was like, what is this? I thought that you have that like last month and I thought you ate it. So obviously it wasn't ate, it was under some books. And good thing with Ziploc bags, it didn't leak all over the place. But yeah, but you just have to make it fun. And a lot of times with ADHD, especially with kids who are on medication, the medication is working the best midday. So a lot of times they just go to school, everything comes back, but I just tell her, just make it fun, just share your food with your friends. Because the thing is, if with kids, if it's fun, they'll eat just about anything. Like I remember one day we're packing lunch in the morning, and then my daughter went into the kitchen and got a jar of Nutella, and she doesn't eat Nutella. Like what kids doesn't want that, right? But she took it and put it in her backpack. I was like, what are you doing with that? She's like, oh, my friends and I were all going to bring something from home and we're going to mix everything into a big pot and we're going to eat that. And then in my mind, I was like, okay, good luck. You're so picky. You're probably not going to eat anything. But anyway, I picked her up from school that day. I was like, oh, so how's that little concoction that you guys made? She's like, oh yeah, it's disgusting, but we tried it. So I was like, oh, okay. So you just have to make eating fun, turn it into an activities without the pressure, and then they'll eat anything or even try anything, even though it's disgusting. So I would say that would be the first thing to start with picky eater and the lunchbox thing. Is the other thing is also having them, letting them to have some choices. Because I know as parents, we're like, we know what's the best for you. So let me make all the decision for you, right? But if with lunch, maybe you can just get all this healthy stuff kind of with some of their input. So that way they feel like, oh yeah, I chose that, so I'm gonna eat it. Because a lot of times I think kids would do better with the eating if they feel like it's part of the project. So you can go online, look up some healthy snacks, or different things to have them make a list together, and then you're like, okay, let's go shopping together. And then when you start packing lunch, and you can ask them, hey, tomorrow, what do you want? And a lot of times parents' biggest mistakes is they ask this open question, right? Like, okay, what do you want? So you open up the whole world to them, and then when they say they want something, you're like, no. And it kind of like defeats the whole purpose, right? So I usually tell parents, don't give them the whole world to choose. Give them 2 or 3 predetermined healthy choice by you. So you start out with making a list with them, and then from that list, you're like, okay, so tomorrow for lunch, do you want apple slices with peanut butter, or do you want like maybe some boiled egg or string cheese or whatever? Just give them few choices that you predetermine, and then let them pick from those choices. So that way it's a win-win situation, right? Because you as a parent know that they're going to get something healthy, and then your child feels good because they're like, oh yeah, I can choose my lunch.
Awesome. Let's say that the child says no to either of those. Then
Mhm.
talk to the emotional response from the parent,
Yeah.
like speak
Mhm.
into that.
Yeah, so um, that's also another thing that parents, I think, take very personally when the child say no, because especially in the young ones, they just like to say no because they know that that word triggers a button in you. So I was like, yeah, just ignore them when they say no. But then instead of trying to fight with them, maybe get their perspective. Okay, so if you don't want this, what else do you want? Let's see what's in the fridge. Because if you, again, you don't want to open up the whole question to like, oh yeah, you can pick anything you want and we'll go to the store and get it, right? But you just say, okay, what do you want? And if what they want is not available, just like, okay, we don't have it in the house, but let's go in the kitchen and go in the fridge and see what else is in there. So then that way you still have your own limit, but then they still have the choice. Because I think after working like with my own experience, and also working with a lot of parents, what I notice is picky eaters, they're not born eating picky eaters. In my opinion, a lot of picky eaters feel that they don't have the choice. So it's like, if you just force me to eat something I don't like, I just don't eat it. It's kind of like thinking of you going to a friend's party, right? Like your friends try really hard to get something that everyone likes, but of course you're not going to eat every single dishes there. So you exercise your right that, oh, I only like this, so I'll just stick with this dish. The other stuff I don't like, I don't want it. So that's why like it's so important that you want to start getting your child involved very beginning, that they can have a say in what they want. But again, you predetermine all your choices. And the other thing that's also very important in letting your child choose is for the emotional well-being. Because when you listen to your child and ask them question, hey, I'm making dinner or I'm planning dinner next week, I want to get your input, I want to listen to you. Because when the child realizes that my parents asking me for my opinion and letting me have a say and have a choice, to your child, that actually makes him or her felt like they're important in the family and they're heard. And I think that's very important in terms of helping them develop the self-esteem. Because just imagine you're a little kid, right? Every time you ask for something, you get a no. So then you grow up grow up to be an adult with no self-esteem because you're like, you know what, why did I even bother ask for something or bother to apply for a job when every time I ask for something, I always get an answer no, right? So, and then back to that is maybe sometimes you can say yes when they ask for a cookie or things like that too. So you don't have to be 100% always strict too.
What I appreciated about what you had given guidance when the kid does say no and you say, come over and let's go see what's in the
Yeah.
refrigerator too, is
Mm-hmm.
it opens up that empowerment and you have
Yep.
restricted it essentially based
Mm-hmm.
upon what you choose to stock in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
it becomes a really natural, easy,
Mm-hmm.
non-confrontational way to handle it.
Yeah, because a lot of one of the biggest mistakes that I also see in parents is that they'll buy all these healthy snacks for the kids, but then they'll also buy all these junk snacks like the candies, cookies, and stuff for the parents. So, and kids are not that stupid. They know when there's candies and cookies in the house. Even when the parents hide it, they're like, I don't know how they figure it out. We hide it in the garage and they still find it. So I was like, okay, so if you don't want those you don't want your child to choose those unhealthy snacks, maybe it's wise to not have it around in the house, right? Because especially if you want to set your child up for success, is if you only stock healthy snacks in the house, then every choice that your child makes is going to be a good choice and it's good for everyone. And I'm not saying that you cannot have cookies, can't have candies or things like that, but maybe just allow those to special occasions, like maybe once in a while you can have a candy bar that the whole family shares together rather than just giving your child a whole candy bar, like knock yourself out, right? But like saving those things for some occasions here and there, but not something that's like they should have every day, which I do have parents who feel bad, like they feel like, oh, the child should have candy, so they just let the child have candy every day. I was like, they don't need candy every day. Like they could have something that is healthy and fun too. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
In the beginning, you shared a story about working with a kid and advising the parent on how to expand the sensories and
Yeah.
handle the sensory part. Can you go into, is there a specific process for that? What does that look like?
So yeah, we want to try and make it sound like very specific, but actually it's not. It's all about playing. So one of the biggest thing that I also remind parents is just make it fun. So in the with feeding therapy, when we're doing therapy, it's actually quite interesting. Like most kids eat, right? But in our feeding therapy, when we have like 4 or 6 kids, none of them eat. So we have all this food in front of them and we just have them play with the food. So we have them cut it, just touch it. So one of the things that I emphasize a lot is having the kids help in the kitchen. Because I think a lot of times the mom just like so like strict, I want my food to be a certain way. I don't want the kids in the kitchen because they're gonna make a mess. I don't want to clean up. But that making a mess is how you expose them to the food. It's just like when you go to toy store, you see all those like toy kitchen set, toy like tea set and stuff. Kids love to do what parents are doing. So if you want to, the best way to get them to want to eat other food is to get them involved in the whole meal planning, meal preparing process. Have them look at like Pinterest pictures and pick out a couple things with you together. Make the shopping list together. Go shopping together. Just don't bring them in the candy aisle and don't tell them you can have a snack while we're waiting at the checkout. Just tell them you can pick whatever things from the fruits and vegetables thing or something like that. But then when you get home, have them help in the kitchen, have them help, like the little ones, they can take things out from the fridge for you, they can wash things in the sink, or just give them a plastic knife and pretend that they're helping you. Whatever things that you can let them do something and be part of the whole cooking process, right? So that way you take them to do something more productive and then they learn that, oh yeah, okay, cooking and eating healthy food is so fun because I can get to spend time with my mom in the kitchen And don't mention that they're making a mess, because you want to help build up their self-esteem and confidence too. So whatever they're doing in the kitchen, just tell them, you're doing a great job. You're such a good helper. And then when they start eating, they feel good and they feel proud, right? Because they just help mom, a grown up, and they're a kid helping a grown up prepare a delicious meal that everyone enjoys together. And sometimes, like when the preparation process, you might have a child like, I'm not gonna eat that. You're like, you don't have to eat it. It's for mommy and daddy. Like if you want, you can eat it, but if you don't want to, it's fine. So you take that pressure off them, that they have to try and eat everything. Because especially with picky eaters, they feel a lot of tension from the parents. Because when they eat, especially with picky eaters, parents so concerned. So when the kids eating, the parents' eyes are all on the child. So they felt that pressure that they have to perform for the parents. So yeah, you want to make eating fun, and then that'll kind of help loosen up the anxiety, because some of these kids who are picky, they do have some anxiety around eating as well. So you want to take that anxiety away from them and just make eating fun for everyone.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
How about snacks and snacking?
Mhm.
Any tips around that?
Yes. So with snacks, so with a lot of the picky eaters, especially the ones who are not gaining weight or actually even losing weight, parents tend to overcompensate, right? So they're like, oh my God, they're not eating any of this food at lunch and dinner. So let's just put a bowl of Cheerios or Goldfish crackers on the coffee table. So the kids can just go in, like every time they walk by a coffee table, they grab a handful of Goldfish crackers and stuff it in the mouth, right? So a lot of times in parents' mind, they're like, oh yeah, well, they're not eating at lunch and dinner. At least they're like eating a handful of crackers, right, every hour. But the problem with that is we call that grazing, actually. So when they're grazing all day long, they never get the belly to the bottom of feeling hunger. So essentially, you're actually numbing the sensation of hunger. Then you're actually putting yourself up for failure when you let your child just graze all day long like that. So usually our recommendation is just stick to the 3 meals. Always feed them at the same time every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Have them sit down at the table and then snacks. Try to limit snacks to no more than 3 times a day, and also holding back on like liquids. And speaking of that, I have a quite interesting story that I can share too. I That was just really recently. I saw a 4 or 5 year old child, and the referral says, "Oh, the child is super picky, and we're planning to do an endoscopy to see if there's something wrong with it." And the endoscopy, for those who doesn't know what it is a sedated procedure. So your child is going to be put to sleep, and they're going to stick this little flexible tube down your child's skull, and then they're going to look at the esophagus all the way down to your stomach. So that's what the GI doctor or the gastroenterologist was planning to do. So she's like, oh yeah, the child is really picky, so I want you to see the child, give them some recommendations, right? So usually I start with taking a history of how their eating is, like how often they eat, what they're eating, and what they're drinking. So after I finished that history, I was like, okay. So mom, first thing, of course, she sat down. I was like, how can I help you? She's like, my child is an extremely picky eater. So I was like, okay, let's see how picky it is and see how I can help. So after taking that history, so it came up, this is the big summary, right? So mom do offer breakfast, lunch, and dinner with the rest of the family. But in between the 3 meals that he doesn't eat, he was getting 4 to 5 snacks between those 3 meals. And then plus the 3 meals and the 4 to 5 snacks, he's also getting about 48 ounces of liquids. Like I think like between chocolate milk and juices, he was getting about 48 ounces of liquids. So I was like, okay, I think I see why he's a picky eater, because he's constantly filling his belly up with snacks. And in between the snacks, he's also filling it up with all these sugary drinks. So of course, when it times to come to eating, he have no appetite because his belly is already full when you try to offer him lunch and dinner. So I gave mom some suggestions to like, okay, we need to limit milk to no more than 16 ounces a day. And we're going to reduce the juice to less than a cup or 4 or 6 ounces a day, which is the recommendation from the American Academy of Pediatrics. And then the snacks, we need to dial down on the snacks to like no more than 3 snacks between meals. And we're gonna offer him like make sure that he doesn't get any snacks or any of the drinks an hour before mealtime. So I have to explain to mom that, because I think sometimes parents, for some reason, they're so afraid that the kids goes hungry. Because when kids say I'm hungry, that's like a magic word that they can get anything they want. So I told mom, it's very, very normal for your child to feel hungry. It's, the hunger is a very normal human sensation, just like fullness. So kids, in order to help your kids to learn to be a healthy, normal eater, he needs to understand the sense of fullness and the sense of hunger. So he knows what to do. But if he's constantly infusing himself with all these sugary snacks and all these sugary drinks, he never learns hunger. And as he get older, he never have that sense, and he'll probably become someone who's a disorder eater, just eat whenever he sees food or with outside signal to eat.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know that you have a resource available for the audience as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So I have 2 free resources for everyone who are interested. So one is actually a mini cookbook with 15 recipes, breakfast recipes, specifically for kids with ADHD that kind of follow my recommendation in my book. And then the other one is a natural ADHD quick start guide. So it's more for someone who just kind of like looking into the alternative ADHD treatment and kind of don't know where to start. That's a good resources too. And both of them you can actually download from my website. So if you go to Eat to Focus, which is all one word, eattofocus.com, and scroll down to resources, and it'll take you to the page where you can download those two free free booklet, and then you can start from there.
Awesome. And you'll find that linked down below, as well as Anna's Facebook group, Instagram, and other social followings. So great to speak with you, Anna. Thank you for your expertise and sharing all these amazing stories and inspiring us with some hope that we don't always have to be concerned about too much sugar intake or throwing healthy food in the trash. And that change is possible.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here, and I hope that all this will help.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.